Welcome everyone to another Mental Health Monday. I'm super excited to have y'all here today. As always, we do have a question queue. So if you have a question for our guests, feel free to type !Q, type it into the chat, and that will get entered, and we will make sure that we get to it. We don't always get to it right away, but promise we will get to it if you put it into that queue. And then also, I am just thrilled to welcome a re-guest. We have Jack Berkenstock back with us again. For those of you who don't recall who Jack was, it's been a year and a half. It's been like a year and a half, I think. I think
already?
So. I think it's
Where
been
has
that long.
all the time gone? Wait, dangerous question to answer right now.
Right. Well, we missed a whole year. It's really only been like 6 months because that whole year just doesn't count.
I would, yeah, 1,000%. I will go with thy logic.
I like it. So Jack Berkenstock is a master's level therapist who's worked in the human services field for 25 years. He received his master's in human services in 2008, has extensive history before that working as a direct support professional. He is the executive director and one of the founders of the Bodhana Group, a 501c3 organization that utilizes tabletop gaming for education, skill building, and therapy. And they're based in York, Pennsylvania. I always almost say New York, but it's not New York. It is York. He's also one of the organizers of TAGS, which I'm really excited to talk about tonight. And that's the upcoming Therapeutic and Applied Geek and Gaming Summit, along with Geek Therapy. So I'm really excited to have you, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me back. It is definitely great to see you again and chat with you. And you know, we've done our catch ups and such, and there is a ton to talk about tonight. So I am an open book, just waiting for words to leap out from the transom that is my mouth. You're like, oh no, I remember this guy now. Here we go.
Everyone loves it. Absolutely. There were a couple of months that lasted several years, so time is meaningless these days. That's the truth.
In the before time.
Yeah. You know what? I like that. In the before times.
Yep.
That's really good.
Before cable companies, mad that we are no longer buying cable packages and we're all streaming, are trying to get us on our internet speeds. Big business.
Right. Right. Yeah, I had to I canceled cable a long time ago, so it was never about like cable or anything, but I did have to increase my internet speed whenever I started working from home full time. That was one of the things that I was just like, no, if this is any sort of long-term thing, I have to have better internet than I have now.
Do you know, I've been a cord cutter for like 14 years. My wife and I cut from cable, and one of the weird things about everybody working from home now that I don't see a lot of people asking this question is, are companies paying people stipends for the use of their home internet? Because like when I worked in mental health and I would be on call and I would have my cell phone like literally grafted to my hip, it was always like, well, here's $50, here's $70 a month for your phone bill. And I'm like, you're being a little sneaky. They're like, well, you could use the office Wi-Fi block. And you're like, it's a brick would be better. So why are you just give me a couple bucks to help pay for my home internet and you'll get much more work accomplished? Just one of those questions. I don't think the hard-hitting journalism is asking the right questions.
I haven't heard that question at all. And I know that my company isn't, but also like one of the things that a company might say is, well, do you have kids and are your kids sucking up some of your bandwidth? And that's not our problem. Like from a purely capitalist bullshit perspective, that's what I could see someone definitely coming back and saying that.
Ugh. No, I could see that as well. But we're not here to talk about internet sharing and.
How did you first come to use games in a therapeutic setting, and kind of who or what inspired you to give that a go?
Well, I would have to say that there are organizations who inspired. I think I told the last time that I was on, I told the whole founding of Bodhana story, where I talked a little bit about our history and such. I don't know how much detail because I think I was here for a totally slightly different topic.
Yep.
So when we started doing our original company, it was all about trying to work with folks with sexually problematic behaviors, people impacted by it. And actually, most of our inspiration to dive the company to this direction was after we started running our first ever Save Against Fear event. So Save Against Fear was our first little convention that we ran out of a local game store called 6 Feet Under Games. And when we ran it, we actually had the wonderful sponsorship of Onyx Path Publishing with our very good friend and now board member, Rich Thomas, who's the director of Onyx Path. And he was formerly creative director at White Wolf. And when he and I were talking like about our mission, he was like, it's really interesting, all the letters and the emails and, stuff that I've been getting from people playing all the Worlds of Darkness setting, how, people were working with their own trauma through playing in these horror settings, and but battling the monsters in the game led to them kind of conquering the monster inside, developing confidence and all these wonderful therapeutic benefits. And we kind of had this, wait a tick, hold on there for a second. So folks were doing this without clinical benefit, and we just kind of sat back and we said, let's examine our own gaming first, and let's talk about what gaming has meant to us. Me being, believe it or not, a very shy kid when I was growing up. I was like, hecka introvert when I was a young man, and like getting me in front of people, I would never talk in open groups and all this stuff. And now you're like, hey, Jack, I'm sorry, the tickets blew up. You had 20 people come and you got 3,000. I'm like, awesome, more people, cool, let's do this. But that, it kind of started us in thinking that, if so many people getting sidelined therapeutic benefits from gaming, what if we took this process and with a theoretical backing to the, we always believe that you stretch the game to fit the therapy. You do not stretch the therapy to fit the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you start with a CBT basis or a DBT or an REBT, some theoretical treatment framework that you're experienced in, trained in, etc. And then you say, well, what can I do about the game to bring those techniques into play? So if we're doing like CBT work, can I build those challenges that will kind of test that cognitive behavioral structures within the fabric of the game? So it's kind of like a seamless connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, in terms of, first hearing those stories from Rich about, people that he had met through doing the World of Darkness and all of his time in Onyx, and also going back to White Wolf days, that kind of started us to go, well, wait a minute, is anybody doing that? And I always want to give a tremendous shout out to one, Hawk Robinson of RPGresearch.com, and all of the phenomenal work that Hawk has been doing for the better part of 30 years, just collecting information and advocating and studying this and researching this for as long as he has. That was truly an inspiration, because we were like, okay, so we're not the only people with this idea, right? And then I also, in kind of a similar old shout out, CARPGA, which is Committee for the Advancement of Role-Playing Games. They're an organization that has been around since the early 80s, and they were actually one of the first groups that organized to advocate that role-playing games were not the harmful hobby that it was painted back during the Satanic Panic. They were like, no, this game does not promote suicide. This game does not promote, people not to make friends. Actually, gamers are probably more well-adjusted and accepting than most other people. So I'd probably say that in terms of, inspiration, it came out of personal stories, and still does to this day. We love talking to people at conventions and conferences, and anywhere we go that people will tell us their stories. It just gives us so many more ideas about how we can utilize this. So yeah, I would say that those two organizations are probably some of the biggest initial kind of oomph, that we had to kind of say, yeah, there's some merit to this, and let's see how we can pursue this. Then of course it was meeting folks like Game to Grow and other organizations who are doing this, and all the professionals that we've met over the years, that we actively collaborate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's another big important piece to RPG that we advocate strongly for, is supervision. Any mental health practitioner, I don't care how good you are, I don't care how long you've been doing this, you got to check in with someone. You got to make sure. And I think especially with RPG and board game, because it's very easy to slide into, it's a funsies game territory.
Right.
That people get so caught up in having a great session that you're like, oh crap, I was supposed to do therapy for a minute there. I'm sorry. There was an awesome combat. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I would say as far as some of the basics about the inspiration.
Yeah, I think that's great. I put all those links. So RPG, just want to make sure I got them on RPG research, Car PGA, Game to Grow, and I also put in Geek Therapy because I mentioned Geek Therapy earlier, but I didn't link them. So there's that link too.
Yes.
And then I'll link Bodhana Group too. Obviously.
Obviously.
Did you guys do Save Against Fear last year? In 2020?
We ran Save Against Fear virtually. It was our first ever, and actually that was pretty incredible because we were able to connect with people all across the world, and all across the country. We had wonderful, great panelists and guest speakers. We actually, all of our panel content is free on our Bodhana's YouTube page. We have about 16 recorded panels from Save Against Fear. We're actually, even though some folks are like, oh, come on, it's only blah, blah, blah. We've actually made the decision as an organization that even where we are at with vaccinations and the rollout and such, we still thought that it was not safe to run a 500 person plus event this year in person. We have some unique ideas. I don't want to give too many sneak peeks away. We have some special plans to hopefully continue that reach, but there will be another Save Against Fear this year. I think at this point, because we wanted our 10th anniversary to fully be in person, so we had 9, then the COVID time, which was 9.5. We're actually stretching it out a little bit more, and this is going to be like a secret Harry Potter's. This will
9
be
9 3/4.
Exactly. So we'll have announcements probably closer to April about that, but that should be the second week of October is when we always run Save. So there are going to be tons of opportunities. We're trying to open up our Tiltify platform that I think we opened after you and I had spoken before, so people can fundraise for us by checking us out on Tiltify, the Bodhana Group, and they could set up their own teams to help fund groups and get materials into the hands of people that definitely will benefit by them.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Oh,
yeah. So what are some common questions you get about using gaming in a mental health context?
I would probably say the biggest question that we get, and I think I talked about this a little bit in our previous interview, but is where's the research? That seems to be it's a sticking point to me to some degree, because it's always, well, where's the research? And I go, oh, okay, hold on. Yes, research is important. However, research tells me CBT is the best thing on sliced bread, but I've worked with plenty of people it doesn't work for.
Yeah.
So research is important. That's probably one of the biggest questions of people saying, well, how do you know this works? And I go, well, there's a lot of ways to check that. And, some of it definitely is showing similar results for people. Like we've had kids that have benefited and have shown improvement in 3 to 4 months of just solid weekly gaming sessions. They've, I absolutely love it. I won't say which group for obvious reason, but very recently I got an email from one of our parents who had said, hey, I know this adventure that you're running right now is kind of taking the kids through this Pugmire setting of Reading, Pennsylvania. So I was like, okay, they're going to go to, and sorry for the geography that you're going to go, what the heck are you talking about? But they went through all these little landmarks of Pennsylvania. And the one mom was like, well, we want to take him on a field trip to go to this place because it's where his adventure, like his characters are there fighting in these things. So do you got any other places that you're planning on going? And like the group is getting together outside of group and socializing outside. And we have kids that are connecting between groups now that the parents are like, hey, if you know any other kids that love to do this, and, we'd love to link them up. So that just the level of friendships.
That's amazing.
And everything. And to me, that's better than research. When you have a kid that was constantly getting in trouble with the quote unquote the bad kids at school, or the kids who were getting him in trouble in class, And now, because of RPG in this child's life, now he's running a D&D club, and he's reaching out to other kids who are kind of like at risk in his school, and he's becoming this voice for these kids. Mom's like, he doesn't hang out with those kids anymore. Now it's with this whole different crowd of kids, and he's working on designing his own game and his own setting. And I'm like, you go, boy, you go. That, to me, yes, research is important. And we actually, I think, at the time when we talked, I believe we had maybe just started our research project. I don't know if I
Mhm.
talked about that at all.
Yeah, so you had just started it, but not really anything else.
Yeah, we finished our first research study. We're currently working on the first set of papers. It was a study utilizing kids on bikes as an RPG setting to measure the efficacy of role-playing games as a therapeutic intervention for
Mhm.
adults with social anxiety. We have a lot of great findings, a lot of great indicators that, yes, there were increases in social skills, there were decreases in social anxiety. And actually, for when we get to tags eventually, one of the presentations that I'm very excited about is one that we're presenting on some of the initial findings of our research. And we're currently then, kind of after this round, we're looking at seeking other universities to expand this research, to maybe investigate with different groups. But yeah, I mean, we totally see the need for research, because it's going to validate and show some indications of, I think the best thing is not necessarily that it works, because I think we know that it works, but I think the important part to this question of research, and also to some degree when people are like, well, how do you know this works? I see changes in the lives of people. I see people engaging with others more readily or more easily. I see kids breaking from routine. I see kids who are better able to be resilient. I mean, one of the things that we've done as a response to COVID is all of our groups automatically, we put an extra half an hour into our sessions, no charge. We were like, look, the world is in flames,
Right.
and kids all of a sudden are remote learning, and we get kids in the political system is where it was. And so we were like, kids are going to need some time to talk
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
addition to just what we were giving them before. So we found, again, another point of growth, kids talking openly about what's going on in their lives and sharing and making those connections, especially in the midst of a pandemic in a divided world.
Mhm.
So, I mean, again, that's probably one of the biggest questions that I won't say annoys me, because that's not fair. But when people are only concerned about, well, what does the data tell me? And I go,
Right.
well, there's quantitative data, but there's also qualitative data. Because again, one of the problems with research with RPG, I feel, is we have very small sample sizes. People go, well, why can't you just run a game for like 16 people? Have you ever played a role-playing game? No. And well, I've run for 12. That's great, but not for a research study.
Right.
Typical group, 5 to 6. That's kind of where we cap, So that's a challenge. But no, I'd say overall the biggest question is, um, how am I just not paying money for you to play with my kid for 2 hours?
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, so we do a lot about education, and we actually have a Likert scale on our survey form that we send out to parents, saying, where do you think your child falls within these areas that are the like 12 or 13 more common skill areas for development. And then we're using these quarterly. It's our own little attempt to kind of carve a
Yep.
little notch in the
Right.
research tree,
Right.
So that's probably one of the biggest questions. But once parents
Mhm.
start to see their child's engagement, their child's excitement, those questions drop almost immediately.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah, because wait, my kid wants to go to group. Yeah, who knew, right? All it took was a dice tray and a couple of minis, or maps, or roll 20 or what have you.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd say that those are probably my most common questions that
Yeah.
I get about tabletop. And the other one is from therapists and other practitioners who are always like, where do you come? Like, how do you create?
Mhm.
And I go, well, what do you mean? Well, how do you create these stories? Well, we create stories. It's like when you GM, instead of following a plot line or a trope, that story of, like, take Rudy, for example. It's the story of the underdog. You can have an underdog story in a D&D campaign that does great to help a kid who feels disenfranchised. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same mechanic. It's just we say, what's the goal? Can I find a
Right.
way to mirror that goal within the fabric of the game's narrative without every 10 minutes stopping to over therapize the kid on whatever point I'm trying to get across?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd probably say those are probably my most common questions that I encounter. And that's after like almost 6 years of doing this. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Bite said, I know we've been struggling with how to get my kiddo some social interaction. Kudos to you for recognizing and filling the need. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you know, my 14-year-old just immediately lost like all of their, not lost, but they didn't have any interaction anymore with any of their friends aside from, you know, a Zoom meeting or a Discord call or something, which is great. I mean, that's still good that that's in place, but I feel like my 7-year-old is going in person, my 14-year-old is still going remotely. And he gets a lot more interaction in first grade. Honestly, he's going because I couldn't work and do school with him at the same time. Honestly, that's the reason he went back. But you know, my 14-year-old, they're fully capable of doing their homework and making sure they're staying on top of school. And yeah, I check in with them, but it's not that big of a deal. But you know, my 7-year-old is getting all this interaction and talking about his friends and talking about this and talking about that. And my 14-year-old just isn't getting that. And so I'm really looking forward to when things go back. But one of the things about about them running a D&D campaign for us right now is that they get a little bit of social interaction. Yeah, it's with their cousin, but I mean it's better than nothing. It's with cousin, aunt, sometimes uncle, you know, like it's something that helps just kind of limp us along, I think.
one of the professionals that I speak with a lot, she's based in New York, and she was telling me a story about one of the groups that she ran, and it was very kind of shortly after COVID and quarantine hit, and the adventure, like they're investigating spooky stuff. They're playing Monster of the Week, right? PBTA system. And basically they're like, well, I have this power that I can like bring stuff from other dimensions. And I'm like a military guy. So I can like call for backpacks and bedrolls and hammocks and whatever. So the kids' session, this is just such an adorable story. They used their powers in the game. They were like, monsters, whatever. They literally were like, well, let's bring a bunch of hammocks and create a campfire. I'm going to zip from another dimension and get us some like espressos and like some frozen, like some frappuccinos, right?
Let's have a picnic.
That's exactly, the whole session was just, let's have coffee around a fire and hang out in person. And that's one of the beauties of this model is they used that session for what they needed therapeutically. Because of their separation, they created what they couldn't have in real life. And every time I think about that story, I only heard it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, I'm so telling that story, Erica. And she was like, please, by all means. So, you know,
right.
Yeah, no, the level of creativity, the collaborative storytelling, there's so many benefits just from playing, just from playing RPG. So,
yeah. We have a question queue, and that is, what is your favorite poem?
Wow. My favorite poem. I can't remember the last time I've read a poem.
Listen, we've had answers everywhere from like serious, super serious, like I know this poem by heart answers to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So no matter what,
no matter what, it's cool.
All good.
I would have to say probably Samuel Taylor Coleridge, I believe. Coleridge, Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Okay.
Water everywhere, not a drop to drink, and of course the albatross. That probably is one of my favorite poems ever, just because I love the epic nature of it. I don't know if Canterbury Tales counts as a poem.
I think so.
It's been way too long since English lit, because I graduated years ago. So.
Do you have a favorite book or movie that you think more people should read or watch?
Yes, a book that I got a while ago. It's called Voice Lessons by Rob Paulson, who most folks may not know by name, but would definitely know by voice. He's the cartoon voice actor who does the voice of Yakko Warner, Pinky from Pinky and the Brain.
Ooh.
Yeah, Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron, a bunch of Ninja Turtles. Like, he's been in cartoon voice acting for decades, but it's this phenomenally inspiring story of he talks about his entire life, but he also talks about a time in his life where he was diagnosed with throat cancer, and just his amazing, like, dealing with, not only something that's like his livelihood, but his life as well. And it's just this, when you meet Rob in person, I've had the fortunate nature of meeting Rob twice at convention that is in Pennsylvania. And he remembered me the second year that I came. And I was just like, oh my God, Rob Paulson remembers me. I was like such a fanboy. But hearing his voice, and I know that's weirdly to say that like I'm writing an ad copy for the book or something, but just hearing the passion and the love and the appreciation he has for like all those little kids that come up to him, and just the sheer joy he has from life and what he does. If you're looking for a good read that'll make you cry a little, make you laugh a lot, but really make you kind of think about like what it is that you really have and taking stock of things they're in our lives, like it's an amazingly poignant read. So yeah, I highly recommend Voice Lessons by Rob Paulson. That's an excellent book.
Well, I have added it to my want to read on Goodreads, so it's on there.
Yeah, I do have kind of a weird addiction. I love reading specifically comedian biographies and autobiographies. I've read Milton Berle, Groucho Marx, Steve Martin, the biography written about Andy Kaufman. Yeah, I've been told I should read Jerry Lewis's biography as well. But George Carlin, his autobiography was phenomenal. I just love what makes the clown laugh, and I love what makes the clown cry.
That's awesome. Yeah. Bites at things that make me cry a little and laugh a lot are my favorite. Yeah. Yes, they're good. Another question from the queue here. Do you prefer square or hex grids?
Ooh, it depends on for my RPG. I will do the complete outside of the box. I prefer no grids.
Ooh.
I am.
You don't get to know where those mushrooms are on this map. They're somewhere in that direction.
No, if it comes down to like running a game therapeutically, and we're using that, totally squares, I think are just always what I've been used to, and I think kids are easier with squares. I prefer no squares because, and again, this is weird, but I actually prefer not to use minis. I'm total theater of the mind when I play. And partially it's because people are like, well, we're in a bar fight. And I'm like, okay, I've never actually been in a bar fight. You can kind of tell. But when you think about that type of environment, I'm not standing there going, well, I'm punching this guy and that other person's approximately 10 feet away from me. So if I punch sidestep, not getting his attack of opportunity off on me, and then I'm able to move by very quickly, like, unless you're watching the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, no one thinks like that in the middle of a fight, right? Like you don't have a top down in the middle of combat. But I see the benefit for it. I mean, especially with kids who need that concrete kind of a thing. So I think psychologically, here I go. I think squares are more satisfying because they seem more ordered than hexes. That is my personal feeling. That is not backed up by research, before anyone asks the dreaded question. But no, I would say squares over hexes. But I've played my fair share of Avalon Hill games, if that gives anyone an indication of how old I am.
So what is tags?
Tag sounds like an adorable name for a cartoon show about puppies. No, I'm just kidding. No, tags is
like wags.
Like wags. Oh wait, okay, it was too close. Actually, Tag, the assassination game, was a movie in the 80s starring Anthony Michael Edwards, I believe it was. Yes, never mind.
Right.
So Tags is the Therapeutic and Applied Geek and Gaming Summit. It is a professional conference style event that will be running over the weekend of April 9th through the 11th. It will be run virtually all 3 days. It is a collaboration between the Bodhana Group and Geek Therapy with my wonderful event organizer partner, Josue Cardona. And it's a collection of a couple of different things, really. What we kind of saw, and this will kind of bleed into one of the other questions, because is we saw the fact and the need that there wasn't really a professional engagement space
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of these ideas. Like, people were kind of like, oh, that's cool, I saw these 2 panels at like this one Comic-Con, or like, here's a selection, but that's where the nerds go. Like, that's where all those folks go. So it's also like, oh man, I missed that Kevin Smith interview because there was this awesome panel I wanted to go to. So it was weird that, Josue and I were kind of doing one of our normal check-ins, because I've known Josue for years. I was on Geek Therapy podcast 2013, 14, somewhere around there.
Long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. So I gotta get out my cane. So yeah, we've known each other for a long time, and we have very similar ideas about, having a theoretical baseline behind all of that, what you do. I mean, and Josue, speaks better to this than I can, but just this idea of, validating this approach and getting this space where people, because there's people that, even with all of the discussion about therapeutic use of things like video games, therapeutic use of role playing, tabletop board games, and even the use of geek culture in therapy, there are still so many professional spheres that do not even entreat this conversation. And it's a shame. It's even more of a shame that you still have professionals arguing neuroplasticity and brain growth and development. Oh, your brain stops growing when you're 50. No, it doesn't. Your brain stops growing when you're dead. That's what science has told us. But still, I think that this pervasive feeling of, okay, you're just a nerd who didn't grow up, and all you want to do is to get paid to do the thing you like to do. No, it's not that. This is serious clinical work. And to kind of further that discussion and to provide an atmosphere and an environment where people with similar mindsets, people with similar practices, people with ideas, people with concepts even, need a place to talk to each other. I said this kind of at the top of the hour, where it's very important to have supervision. One of the versions of supervision is, hey, I was thinking about doing such and such. What do you think about that as another professional? So tags originally was an idea to kind of get this professional development space, but also a networking space. So, it's kind of weird. Like, at this point, I know that there are tons of organizations doing it, but there are essentially like 3 major organizations as companies who are talking about therapeutic RPG on a large scale.
Mm-hmm.
It is the Bodhana Group, it is Game to Grow, it is RPG Research.
Yep.
In terms of the clinical field. I know I'm not the only person. I know I'm not a pioneer or a trendsetter. I'm a person that had a great idea that a whole lot of other people had. And it's important for us to talk together,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to know what Game to Grow is doing, not from a business standpoint, from a practitioner standpoint.
Right.
Because if there's something I'm doing that I shouldn't be, I want another professional to call me out, not just for my own edification, but also for the sanctity and what I call the stewardship of this practice, that is the use of alternative approaches to traditional therapeutic intervention. So when using a game, you got to make sure it's not too much game, not too little therapy. We also got to make sure it's not too much therapy, too little game. When we talk about video games or geek culture, yeah, it's cool to talk to a client of like, they like Green Lantern, I like Green Lantern, but geek therapy, geek culture and therapy, it's so much different than that. It's not just rapport building. That might be a part of it, but that's not the ebb and flow of the entire process. I don't just play D&D with kids. Actually, I prefer not to use D&D. I personally think it's clunky for therapy. That's just me. So, long answer. That's right. We've met. This whole idea was something that we had been thinking about an event of this sort, because every year at Save Against Fear, we run our professional trainings, we run workshops and panels. We had been thinking about something that was kind of like, okay, let's take like this orange that is this wonderful fruit that people feast upon at our event. Why don't we squeeze that juice and just make it a nice rich glass to drink from? And Josue had a very similar idea when he and I were checking in, just saying, "Hey man, how's it going? What's going on? Blah blah blah." And we kind of went, "What you take?" See, it's a running gag now. That wait, you have this idea, I have this idea, and I was like, "Well, I kind of have a lot of folks within the tabletop board game and tabletop role playing. Josue has a ton of connections in the video gaming and geek culture and therapy. Why don't we, combine forces? Da, 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 and
Get
that's
matching
kind of
decoder rings.
yes, exactly. And so that's kind of how it was born as an idea. And then, I mean, it's only taken the better part of maybe like 3 months
Mhm.
or so for us to kind of gear up and get it going. And yeah, we're less than 2 weeks from go time. The response has been phenomenal.
I
Tons of
know.
great interest, tons of great panels. We have over 65 events throughout the weekend. We have presentations, workshops, Q&As, discussions. We have live plays, play tests, just a ton of great opportunity for professionals. And I think, there's also a lot of room, I think, for other avenues to this. And I know that you are a part of this. I didn't know how much you wanted to kind of self promote in addition to tags promote, but yeah, I it kind of went into the idea of the theme,
Mhm.
because I know, again, not to I remember the order of these things. but we very specifically we chose a theme that we felt resonated,
Mhm.
and that theme is community. Everyone has a seat at the table.
Yeah.
um that's more than like, hey, looks great on a t-shirt. It's this idea that when we talk about community, and that's a word, and that's a concept that I think we kind of realize to some degree that we really have taken for granted, especially given the last year, where people are like, well, I hate Zoom. And then after like 3 months, it's like, well, if it's all we got. And then afterwards, it's hating Zoom for a totally different reason, because, like kids like, I don't want to go to D&D Zoom. I've spent all day in Zoom. I hate Zoom. Um, but the idea of community is, and you know this more than anyone because of the community that you and everyone have built together. It's a place for support. It's a place for coming together. It's a place for not only sharing ideas, but also it's a place to be vulnerable and a place to be comfortable within that space. Community is it's kind of like the Buddhist concept of compassion. It's the idea that compassion is caring and it's loving and it's understanding, but it's also honest. And I think community is also come here. I think you're kind of off the deep end there. Come here. We love you, but we don't want to see you doing what you do. Come here. Come on. But in this space, I think community is a lot more about the fact that, because this modality, this methodology is something that sometimes comes under fire from other professionals who don't
Mhm.
understand, or, I hesitate to use the word fuddy-duddy, but, there's folks who are kind of like, I have the perfect mustache for that,
And
right?
it was
Yeah,
absolutely perfect.
it was perfect. I don't understand all this talk of video games and therapy. Talk to the person, by Jove. Um, but it's the idea that, as a community, we are responsible, as with any other child. Okay, and again, this is one of the things that this idea of, whether it's geek culture and therapy, video games, tabletop, whatever, it is an emergent modality. Yes, there have been people that have been doing this for 12, 20 years, whatever, but now more people are doing it.
Mhm.
And there's always an inherent risk, especially with something that's sleek, sexy, cool. This RPG therapy is the new hotness, and there's a lot of us going, whoa, 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 hold on, no. It maybe it's hot because it's just out of the oven and it ain't cooled down yet. So before we
Yeah.
slice the brownies, Could we talk about what's in the recipe? Could we say, oh, you made a similar looking set of brownies. Can I examine your ingredients? Not that I'm calling you out or anything, but a community needs to be responsible for what it's putting out there, but it also needs to shepherd and guard what is being put out there to make sure that there is integrity and to make
Yeah.
sure that there is a seriousness and a clinical level of oversight. And it's not about one or two people who are stewarding or rent setting or gatekeeping or whatever you want to call it. This is where the second part comes in, that everyone has a seat in the table quite literally means, and I'm going to say this in a very non-delicate way, but anyone who's met me knows what I mean when I say this. I don't give a frog's fat rear end whether you're licensed or unlicensed. I care whether you're professional, whether you're ethical, whether you're trained, and whether you're getting supervision. Because licensure means a lot of different things from many different domains. And I don't want to just hear from these people. Yeah, I do want to hear from the psychologist and the psychiatrist and the people that are doing this work and the researchers and the practitioners and the therapists. But I also want to hear from the direct support professionals who are using board games on the weekends in a residential. I want to hear from nurses using these on in-care patient facility units. I want to hear from community leaders who are using these in Boy Scout troops. I want to hear from people using this in all walks of life professionally. We want to hear from educators. We want to hear from professors. We want to hear from student teachers. We want to hear from students, because fresh ideas are what breathes life into this to help it float. People trying to weight it down with questions like, who owns it? Who's in charge of it? Who gets to say who does and who doesn't do it? Stop. In the immortal words of, Peter Venkman from Ghostbusters, we don't even know what we have yet. There are so many permutations to this, and it goes even further to, we have a lot of people talking about autism support using role playing. We have people talking about addiction support. We have people talking about family systems therapy and using this with families. So it's so many different ways that this could be utilized that we want to hear. We don't want to hear from the same 8 people that present at every convention.
Right.
And I'm talking about myself included in that. Yes, I get plenty of mic time. So we want other professionals who are engaging in this to come. That's what community, everyone has a seat at the table. And that's even, we want to invite designers in on this, and also mental health advocates. And, folks who are benefiting from these services are voices that are also welcome, because, again, I part of my stint in the mental health and human services fields, I worked for about 10 years with adults with disability. A very big part of that community are the people receiving services being able to say, excuse me, do I get a say in this? Absolutely,
Right.
you do. You're the beneficiary. I can't sit here in an ivory tower and go, well, I write the best modules ever, and here's my adventure, and it's perfect. And why aren't you getting better? Wait, come here. Where are you going? So I think that is part of the idea, because, we want to get all these like minds and these peoples together to discuss how we're using it. And let's ask some tough questions. Let's have some good, meaty conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So with your inaugural theme being community and everyone has a seat at the table, are there any typical people who feel like they don't have a seat at the table when it comes to mental health and gaming?
I would say a lot of folks that, and Josue and I talk about this a lot, the whole like lifting someone up, where there are a lot of professionals that we know who are people doing great work. And because of, I don't know if bias is the word, but because of this prevalent ideology and belief system within mental health, that unless you're a licensed therapist, you're not a real therapist, which I take personal umbrage with that, because I'm not licensed, but I think I'm a wonderful therapist. Like I've done great work. And I know a lot of people who may feel, well, I won't really have anything to contribute because I'm a bachelor's level professional, or I'm a DSP. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Do you work with people? Yeah. Do you use games? Yeah. Have you had good results? Yeah. Well, then talk about it. Well, I don't think they'd want to hear from me because I do drug and alcohol. Why is that not useful? Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really doing clinical. I mean, it's, I'm helping these folks are, gaming together so they're not using or abusing because they're hanging out in a game store when they don't have alcohol in the game store. I'm like, how is that not beautiful? That's
Right.
gorgeous. That's
That's the
wonderful.
story. Come on.
Exactly. And the story must be told, right? Like, go tell it on the mountain
Mhm.
how, hey, just something as simple as introducing gaming to someone could steer them away or develop a complete. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
biggest things in efficacy above all about any China modality, one of the biggest single factors, and again, something that's pretty obvious to most folks who are listening, is community support systems. The
Mhm.
biggest factor that reduces any type of recidivism are social relationships. We are social animals. As much as people like to pretend, I don't need nobody and I don't need nothing. No, you do. And we can fight that as much as we want. But again, one of those things that hopefully we've learned throughout the pandemic is how important connection is to other people. I think that we really, for the first time, could not escape that pang.
Mhm.
So, yes, I want to hear about how games are creating natural supports and how many friends do you have in your life that started at a game table, right? How many people do we know that met their significant other or
Yeah.
found their true self around a set of dice or around a couple of games of Risk? Or even hell, Stratego, I'll throw that one on the pile, right? So yeah, that is one of the things that I always say is kind of a shame that a lot, because of the culture, like people feeling. I never like when someone who is good doesn't feel they're good enough.
Mhm.
I have to say that's kind of like, a little bit of behind the screen, if you want to know. Like I don't like anyone being told they're not good enough, or if you only applied yourself or tried a little harder, you could be blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, don't tell me I need to try harder. Tell me how to develop. Tell me how to get better. And part of it is giving
Yeah.
people a chance.
Mhm.
I've met a ton of professionals who are like, man, my first panel ever was at Save Against Fear. Awesome. Tell me when your second and third are, because I'll be there, or I'll promote the living hell out of you. Why? Because again, there's so, just as I'm a front runner, I'm a pioneer, whatever. I know that there are people that I've made time for who are
Mhm.
now getting their licenses and they're getting their PhDs. And they're like, oh my God, I remember all this stuff that you did. Thank you for giving me that time. And I go, you know what? That was because when I started, someone else gave me time.
Yeah.
And I think that idea of lifting someone else up, and I know that this is something that I've said, Josue has said, that Games of Growth, Adam and Adam have said. All of these people at this conference, all these people at Tags, they are not my competitors in one sense. Yes, they're competitors. We're technically vying for the same market because it's digital therapy, whatever, but they're my colleagues.
Yeah.
These are like professionals. We're all doing similar work. You can't tell me that someone who's an RPG head doesn't play video games or isn't into anime or superhero properties or whatever, right? So we have to talk and we have to share. And the only way that we get that is to develop people's confidence and to build people up by saying, oh, no, you got 90 minutes. You're good. Because what you want to talk about is something people need to hear.
Mhm.
Well, what
Yeah.
if only like 12 people show up to my panel? It's going to be on video and it'll be up there for an entire year and we will
Yeah.
promote the heck out of it, right? So that, I would say, is one of the biggest sadnesses. There are a lot of people out there who don't feel they're good enough because the degree doesn't say they are.
Mhm.
But I know a person who was a licensed professional counselor who, and I shit you not, pardon my French, was laying hands on a client to cast out the demons. I cast no aspersions on a person's
Hey.
religious or spiritual path. However, I haven't seen any research to validate that as an actual therapeutic practice.
Right.
So let's dial back the judgment a little bit about licenses and degrees and
Mhm.
such. Let's talk about heart. Let's talk about, people who do this work with sincerity, integrity, and with a willingness to learn
Yeah.
and share. That to me, and I know to Josue and I, and that's part of the spirit going into Tags. We have something to offer each other. So let's build up a healthy buffet.
Yeah. I mean, just from a religious perspective, I think it's supposed to be the person who God is coming through them, who's doing the laying of the hands. If you're into that kind of thing, but
the paladin isn't like, yo, Ranger, you got this for me. Like that's not how it goes, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I can't buy a pass to do Reiki for 2 hours.
No,
that's not how that works. At least I'm pretty sure that's not how it works.
I mean, maybe it is. Who knows? Who really knows? Not anyone who's living, I guess. If you had to estimate, how much time would you say that everyone collectively has put into making this happen?
I don't know if I can estimate that. I would say in all good faith, I mean, a lot with any kind of event. I mean, at this point, I think I've run or co-organized a total of about 16 events since we started Bodhana, and this is going to be number 17. Because we've run countless Save Against Fears. We also used to have an event called Meeples and Peoples Against Abuse, which was a board game version of Save until we conjoined them. Plus, we've helped and assisted with other events. So I'd say at least 20 hours a week has gone into this.
On top of like normal jobs and all that.
Yeah, well, I run Bodhana. I also privately contract doing risk assessments for adults with disability with sexually problematic. I also do, a host of other trainings and things. So yeah, in addition, but there's also, there's a bunch of folks who are volunteering their time as well to help with like data entry and, trying to get back to people who are doing presentations. So there's a ton of work going on. I can't, because one of the questions you asked was like, how many people are helping out with this? I honestly, and I know Josue feels the same way on this, I'm more than certain, is to me and to us, every person who is presenting is assisting. It's not just that behind the scenes, because really it's you set it up, then you kind of throw the lever, right?
Right.
There's this whole thing in doing cons where it's pretty much, well, there's only so much we can do now. Like it's opening time, I guess. Whatever happens, happens, and it's not really that laissez-faire, but there is a truth to the fact that you can only prepare so much.
Yeah,
something's going to go wrong. A panel's not going to get recorded, or a mic isn't going to work, or someone's internet's going to kill, or
whatever. That'll be mine. Whatever could go wrong technically, it'll be in mine. Don't worry, I got you covered.
Can we call it Zoo Murphy's Law? We can kind of combine those two.
Yes, just combine them all into mine. I am 100% used to it. It is okay.
No, but there are a wealth of folks who have been helping and assisting with behind the scenes work as well as frontline, like promoting everything. So, there's a huge thank you to everyone that's been a part of this. It's been phenomenal. The level of response, clearly, this was a hole that needed to be filled. And
absolutely.
I'm glad to be one of the persons holding the shovel.
Yeah.
That's and again, this is, I think, better than what Josue and I dreamed at the beginning, especially for the short time that we were kind of like, oh yeah, well, this is the day we're kind of shooting for. Yeah, we could do that. and here we are, with a tremendous attendance for the first year, and we're already looking forward at, okay, how can we do this better next time? And it's always a good sign when before the event actually runs, you're talking about next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Mama's the designated technical glitch magnet. That is the truth. That's the truth. I'll just suck it all to me, and then it'll be fine for everyone else.
Can you not wear watches either? And I'm being totally serious with that question.
So I can wear watches, but they don't work. Like I have watches, but unless they're like a ticky watch, with an actual tick tick tick, it just doesn't, like, I don't have one that's lasted more than 6 months.
Every watch,
and so I don't wear them.
Yep, mine usually get broken because I'm too frenetic when I move, but it's always like, what? I don't even remember smashing anything.
Yeah.
Why doesn't this? Yeah. So, okay.
Yes. I always have something that goes wrong. So that's just how it goes. It's okay. And it's always things that people are like, okay, you're explaining the problem fine. We understand what's happening. We don't know how or why it's happening or how to fix it. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Yes.
Ah, dang, what? Oh, okay.
Yeah. My watches all stop too. See, bite your it's you know what? It's just it is how it is for some people.
We're in good company.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely. Does self-care become more important when you're working on something big?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because one of the things that, again, a lot of folks, until you run a convention, even like going to multiple conventions, you never realize the types of problems that can come up. How you're like, oh, whoa, never thought of that. Like, you know, and it's like, because that one person will ask you a question that makes you go, oh, damn, we did. Hold on, wait.
Let me figure that out real quick.
Yeah, right. There's no rule book for
Right.
that, right?
Yeah.
There's just kind of great ideas, great intentions. So no, I will say that self-care, especially because of the fact that your regular 9 to 5, when you do something in addition like this, that doesn't stop.
Right.
That is, and a matter of fact, sometimes you almost feel as if those other things mount themselves for a stronger drive. You know, wait, I'm getting more calls now. I'm getting more. Oh my God, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
But I have this thing. Well, you have extra hours then, you know, and already I think most of us, just in terms of self-care, it's a very fascinating topic to me, especially with what we've been dealing with. But yes, self-care, highly important, because it's always, I only got one more email to answer. I only have one more line of data to enter in. And there's so much to do that sometimes we don't think about, well, I got this, you know, and again, speaking for myself, I'm 48. I'm a very youthful, exuberant 48, but I realize that I'm no longer that 28, 30-year-old professional DSP or team lead working on the unit who's like, yeah, go ahead, sign me up for another 16, whatever, coffee. Coffee's like, man, I'm just keeping you awake, Jack. What are you relying on me for extra now? Like, that has passed.
I'll get you to baseline.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that self-care is something that I think it's especially also important when you're passionate about something. People always feel like there's always going to be enough. I mean, yeah, Cap, I get it. There's, you know, I could do this all day. No, you can't. That's a movie line. That's not necessarily reality, because eventually, come hell or high water, your body's going to tell you to stop, whether you want it to or not. So I would say that definitely self-care, and Josue and I already have like kind of a little thing. He's like, you're at that point, aren't you? And I'm like, I'm at that point. Thank you for recognizing that. And he goes, I've seen you at this point. It ain't pretty. And I go, you're right. It's damn ugly. But, you know, so yeah, self-care is highly important. And I'll say this, not speaking just for myself, but speaking, I think, for a predominant amount of people in the human services mental health field. We are crappy self-care people. I'm just going to say, for the most part, we ain't good at it. It's that I can give phenomenal advice, but damn if I'll take it myself, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, yeah, highly important, because I think that I know for myself, and this is, I mean, I could psychoanalyze as many times as I want, you know, eldest kid in a divorced family, took care of my younger brothers and sisters. I've been hypervigilant since I was 10. Like that, how's the room? Is everybody okay? Is everybody okay? I ask people if they're okay so much that they tell me, you ask me one more time, I ain't going to be okay. All right, I got it. But that, I think, lends into people not checking in, people not listening to their bodies, pressing forward, because we got to get it done. We got to get it done. Nope, you'll get it done tomorrow. And if it doesn't get done tomorrow, it'll get done the next day. I know that's a challenge for me. And I know one of the things that I have learned to accept is my own limitations. If that makes sense, it's a harsh reality to go. I'm not 20 anymore. I can't go for 2 days straight without sleep. I could barely go 12 hours without needing to lay down for a nap. That is part of the human condition. It's also part of stress, which
Mhm.
I think one of those other things that, in terms of self-care, that we've kind of become aware of, especially with quarantine, is that lack of human contact to energize us is something that we no longer have ample distraction. I've kind of enjoyed it in a way, because one of my self-cares is meditation and mindfulness practice. And one of the things that I've kind of loved, and I hope this doesn't sound wicked when I describe it, I love the fact that people have had to sit with themselves.
Mhm.
I love that. And people are like, well, this sucks. I realize how freaking bored I am. And I go, that's good. You're getting in touch with a part of yourself that you fought so hard to avoid. That's self-care.
Mhm.
Is finding the parts of yourself that are not pleasant and loving those parts of yourself as much as you love the things that you love about yourself. It's easy to love positives, but it's very difficult to love not being able to say no, always promising what you can't deliver on ultimately that you know you can't. All of those things, that's where true self-care is, loving the
Yeah.
whole you.
What are some of the signs that your body does need more self-care, or just like flat out maintenance in general?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's usually a couple of. No, I'm just totally kidding. There's one, just being able to have, like, that cogent, cognizant thought. Like when I
Mhm.
start speaking more generally, that's one of the signs to me that I need to go to bed.
Mhm.
Like when I'm not using words like cogent and cognizant, and like, and I'm start like, the thing with the stuff, the thing, right, the thing, and I'm
I know the
literally
thing. I
looking
absolutely know
right.
the thing.
I was drinking that soda. What the hell is it? I just can't know. What's the thing?
Hmm.
It's in the bottle. That's one sign. I mean, also, I think that whether it is tightness in our chest, breathing, eyes are a big one, especially with all of the time in computer land. It's ironic. Like, oh my God, I've been at the computer for like 8 hours today. Hold on, I got to take a break. There's
Uh-huh.
blue light on my face. Oh man, I can't play that game anymore. Let me go play Xbox for a couple hours. Then my doctor's like, gee, Jack, I don't know why your eyes are watering uncontrollably. Let's delve into that, shall we? Um, but I think it's a lot of it is just taking, and I know that this isn't like, well, Jack said it, so it's easy. Taking a moment to slow down, even if it's for 5 to 10 minutes, because I think one of the risks, and I know this for myself, is taking the time to at least hear the sign
Hmm.
when people are telling you, hey, we haven't heard from you for a while. Hey, we haven't gotten together in a while. Where have you been? Just a lot of these things that we will hear from people, and sometimes we try to say that we're fine and blow it off. Being attentive to those things that the people around us are telling us that we maybe haven't thought about or initiated. I think that getting rid of pride is a very big aspect of self-care, and something that I know that I struggle with. I don't like to be told I can't, so I refuse to say I won't. So if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it
But yeah,
does.
yeah, it's anything from how you're talking to how you're free, how you're feeling, whether you're sitting or slumping, the last time that you've gotten up and walked around, the last time you've had sun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I think things like that are important things to keep. It's actually a practice in Noggle, Central South American shamanism, as well as it's also kind of a Buddhist practice of, I call it self-stalking. There's actually a mindfulness bell app that you can get for your phone, and you could set it to ring uh, just randomly. And it's in your pocket, and you can set it to vibrate, and you could say like, hey, every like 23 minutes. I want this bell to go off. So you set some kind of random alarm, and when it goes off, you literally just stop and examine your thought. Am I feeling tight? Am I feeling hot? Am I feeling cold? Am I feeling hungry? Am I feeling sluggish? What thoughts are going through my head? If you do that enough times, you'll see the dialogue. And there is definitely, like, you have a series Bible. Like, you have, just like Star Trek, there were certain rules that were always prevalent. Kirk always does this, Spock always does that. You always do the same things. It's just we've never given ourselves the time to sit and listen to and see those patterns as they emerge. So the act of self-stalking is really a helpful practice in mindfulness, because you're able to identify the most frequent and ever-present dialogues that you're having within your own head. And you'll even find, as you then go and analyze deeper, which is why I said earlier, I love that people are sitting with their uncomfortable. Discomfort breeds change. Because one of my favorite phrases, I don't know where the heck I got it from, I think it's Buddhist, but the only thing that never changes is that everything always changes. So we need to respect change, because it is a part of what we live. So yeah.
I like the term self-stalking. I think that's really descriptive and neat.
You're kind of watching yourself from the shadows, kind of examining what you do and what you're thinking. And a lot of times, again, I think the key has been that we have video games, we have cell phones, all that kind of stuff, but not being able to leave the house really pulls a lot of distractions out of your, out of your ammo. I don't know what the heck that thing is called. I'm probably getting tired, right? Yeah, the bandolier, that's what it's called. But yeah, that idea of we can't run as much as we used to be able to. Because now, oh my God, my wife, my kids, everybody's just all this noise, blah, 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 blah. What's that telling you? Now, it might be my kids are getting on my nerves, which is totally fine. That happens, right? But listening to that is I think the apex of self-care that, I'll admit I struggle with it myself pretty consistently. I also have, anxiety and depression that I struggle with as well, that I use mindfulness meditation for. So yeah, but it's that you don't fix it. You manage it. You live with it. You hug it. You love it. I love my anxiety as much as I love my depression, as much as I love my creativity that comes from my ADHD. I love all parts of myself. Some days it's easier to love me than others, but that's life, right?
Yep, that's true. I apologize. I haven't somehow an eyelash just flew into my eye, or a cat hair or dog hair or something. I'm not over here like bawling or anything.
Yeah, I would say I'm not that deep right now, I don't think.
Everything you said is just really now.
Well, okay, I've gotten some tears. My work is done here. That's what therapists do, right?
So what are some things that a lot of people commonly view as self-care that might not actually be self-care?
Well, I mean, some obvious ones to a degree, I guess. Well, I don't know. I would say powering through is not really self-care. That people are like, no, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to get through this. I'm just going to get over it. I work better under pressure.
Yeah.
It's like the coffee paradigm, right? There's only so much coffee you ingest that makes it beneficial, after which point you see through your eyelids and it's no longer a beneficial chemical. You actually, I think it's like 4 cups of coffee or something put you into caffeine overdose. And I'm like,
I know if I have more than 3 cups, like I get the jitters and everything, like paranoia, everything is like.
Right. People are like, no, it keeps me focused.
My eyeballs start vibrating.
Yes, exactly. I had that where I'm like just laying there and all of a sudden I'm like, the covers are shimmering. I'm like, the covers aren't shimmering. My eyes are going like, oh, it's just weird. But no, I would say that I don't know, because to some degree, like people say like things like vacations or video games, or even people say like smoking. Now, obviously, to some degree, there's worries about, cigarettes or alcohol and things like the potential harmful effect. I think when we talk about self-care, it's as important as everything else, which is moderation. There are definitely some unhealthy practices like, illicit drugs that could be immediately harmful, things like that. Um, but in some cases, just the fact that you're going, well, I'm taking a moment to have a cigarette to calm down. All right, chemically, I know that the only reason that cigarettes relax you is because you're actually suffering withdrawal. Nicotine doesn't relax you until you're addicted to it.
Right.
That's chemical. We know that. But the fact of someone saying, oh my gosh, I need to take a break for a minute to go have a smoke break, there's still an inherent benefit to taking a break.
Yeah.
Whether it's because of your office smoking policy or whatever. But I think that's the real determiner about if something's unhealthy or not, is if you're doing it in moderation and not purely for escape. Because escape is good, but we can't run away forever. We can't run away all the time. There is a point where you have to face, the ugly potato of injustice in the eye, or whatever that Stanley Spadowski quote was from UHF. Hi, I'm a human TiVo. How's it going? But no, that's what I would say. I mean, as far as commonly, accepted things, I know plenty of people are like, man, I'm playing video games for 6 hours. People are like, man, what a waste of time. And I'm like, is it though? Like, are they really hurting anybody by doing that? No, if they're not feeding their kids because
Right.
they're playing video games for 6 hours. Again, not in moderation,
Yeah.
not keeping everything in perspective. And yes, you can occasionally do a little bit more than what you would normally do. That's normal. But yeah, I would say that only when it's unbalanced and you're ignoring other self-care needs, that's to me is where the line should be drawn.
Yeah. We can't run away forever. I didn't come here to be called out.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I'm gonna.
So, are there any regular habits that either you maintain yourself or that you encourage clients to develop that you feel might not get enough attention that support overall well-being?
I would say mindfulness presence, which, I mean, the simplest definition of mindfulness is be and just feel what you feel. There are days that I am absolutely pissed off. I love that people are asking the Dalai Lama years ago in interviews, so you don't get mad. And he's like, what are you talking about? I get mad all the time. Of course I get mad. I don't stay mad or I don't act out of anger, but I feel what I feel because it's there. It's there for a reason. So that honesty of, yeah, if I'm pissed off, I'm pissed off. I will not use that anger to zing out at someone or be hurtful or harmful or destructive in my expression of that to myself or to others. But that's probably one of my biggest things is, if you're having a feeling, if you're having a reaction, Jack Kornfield is a very eminent Buddhist psychology author, and he's identifies the principle of RAIN, which is RAIN. You recognize, acknowledge, identify, then not, I'm sorry, recognize, acknowledge, interpret, then non-identify, which is you recognize first that you're having a feeling, you acknowledge that it's okay and what feeling you have, then you interpret why the feeling is happening, and then non-identify is probably one of the most important parts of it, which is I am not my feeling. When people literally say like, I'm mad, no, you are not mad. You are feeling anger, which is a projection of a mental image, probably a thought or experience that your brain is obviously, like, honestly misinterpreting. So it may be something that happened in third grade and that person reminds you of someone doing something to you right now. So you're feeling that same feeling that's very visceral and very real, but on the other hand, it's not real because it's a projection of something that you didn't take care of years ago. And that's part of that self-care honesty practice of if you're having a feeling and it's going back to something way back when, you probably haven't unpacked it the way that you thought you did. And that's not an admonishment of people, or it's not a judgment thing. I do it all the friggin' time where it's just, oh crap, that's because of this and the way that this happened and this. Okay. So I need to work on that. And that's okay, because recognizing the need to work on it is as important as anything, because people will try mindfulness and they'll go, well, I can't meditate. I can't focus on a candle. I can't focus. Yes, I get that. Part of the fact that you're practicing mindfulness by saying, I can't stay focused. You're realizing what Buddhist scholars and Buddhist monks called monkey mind. Your mind is, and you're like grabbing whatever you can, right? That's monkey mind. It's very chaotic. It's like a monkey that grabs into a jar to grasp a nut or a jewel and can't pull its hand out because it has the jewel.
Mm-hmm.
If monkey just lets go and calms down, it can pull its hand out at any time. But we grasp and then we struggle because we're locked into something. And oh my God, I can't let it go. I can't let it go. So mindfulness is much of going, wait a minute. Okay. That's just as important. And actually, I thought I sucked at mindfulness meditation when I started it because my ADHD brain, I was like, I can't do this. I can't stay focused. And then I read one book, and I can't even remember the title of it, who literally was like, yeah, you're going to suck at this when you start. Because especially if your mind is undisciplined, it's going to seem like you're bad at this.
Yeah.
But you're actually recognizing how undisciplined your mind is. That's part of mindfulness. You're awaking to the present moment being chaotic. Oh, and then when you go back to the breath, you're practicing resetting the clock. There's so many benefits. Actually, the Mind and Life Institute, they did several studies on mindfulness meditation. You actually can show physical brain map changes within 6 to 8 weeks of practicing solid mindfulness meditation.
Wow.
Because it reroutes neurochemical activity in the brain, like our dopamine centers and, norepinephrine, all these things that happen, like, when we have amygdala fear responses and all that. Like, you can train your brain to slow down, to realize, oh my God, that's a bad choice I was about to make. But it takes time and practice.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah, mindfulness is probably the biggest thing that I advocate for clients, and just taking a moment, take a mo, have a breath, calm down.
Yeah.
You don't have to fix it right now. It'll still be there, obviously. Otherwise, it wouldn't still be there now. But, you'll get to it when you get to it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. If you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen a different path, what would you be doing instead?
I would be a 1920s suitcase novelty joke gag salesperson. No, that was the first thing my ADHD brain came up with. I'm sorry.
Okay, but you would be a great one of those also.
Hey, would you like
what
a set
fun,
of walking,
what a
teeth,
fun
huh?
thing.
Here's a bang cap for your cigar, see? You give it to your buddy Sal and you light it up and boom, it explodes in his face. That's horrible. No, sincerely, I would be an author. I'd be a fiction writer. That's kind of what I wanted to do before I discovered the mental health field, and now I think I found a good way to marry those two.
Yeah.
I did corporate. I did sales for years. I'd say author. If I wouldn't be doing this directly, I'd probably purely be writing fiction.
Mm-hmm. That's really neat. So we have another question in the queue. Do you have a suggested resource, book, etc., for someone wanting to start mindfulness practices? It's a good question.
Yes. No, that's an excellent question. Well, one of the books that I recommended last time, because I always seem to have a handy when I'm doing chats or interviews. A good place to start, I would say, is this book called The Misleading Mind from Karuna Keaton. And it's an examination of how our mind can get trapped into different levels of just thinking. I won't say incorrectly, but thinking in a weird way about the way that the world works and the way the world operates, because our brain's been trained in a way that we're not always cognizant of. I would also recommend anything by Pema Chodron, who writes a lot about mindfulness meditation and reclaiming of the self. Thich Nhat Hanh, which I think I can actually type that into our chat, because sometimes his name is a bit tough to express. But Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who has he's written so many volumes about mental health or mindfulness. about how to understand mindfulness, and he writes very beautifully and very poetically. Is one of the things that really, really love about Master Te, because it just, his words are beautiful, and he's been an activist, since the Vietnam era and before. So I would say that anything from Thich Nhat Hanh, Pema Chodron, and if you want to look at other ways, are Jack Kornfield, which is Cornfield with a K. He's also a great author who writes from a mental health perspective. He has this one great book that I might have talked about it before. It's called After the Ecstasy, The Laundry. And it's a fascinating book, which isn't just the Buddhist tradition, but he talks about how people have these great religious epiphanies and these, like, oh, I went to this monastic retreat for like a weekend and I found out so much about myself and I just grew so much as a person. And then you drive home from the mountain retreat and you're like flipping people off on the freeway and like, because hold on, you had this great moment. What happened from the monastery to the giant in your local neighborhood? And part of it is realizing these truths that we carry with us, and part of it is mindfulness, to realize what it is that we're doing, how it's impacting us, what our proper choice is. And so I would say that those are some great authors to seek as far as for mindfulness. They're the ones who've been some of my faves.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. So this is new from the last time that we were here together, but I now have a magic wand. I don't think I had the magic wand before. You've got your magic wand as well.
Battle?
We're gonna have a wizard battle. So I'm actually just gonna pass you my powers, and then you get to use my powers to wave your magic wand and eliminate one common opinion, misconception, theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health. What are you going to eliminate today? And I will just pass you my powers through the magic of the internet there. So
all right. I would say that my magic Disney wish to get rid of one misconception, and I hope that I'm not the first person to say it. I hate, absolutely, and yes, I will use that word hate in absolute sincerity. I hate Hollywood's message that mental health can be fixed with a phrase. I hate the idea that, yeah, you know what? It was an emotionally moving scene in, Good Will Hunting, when he's like telling Sean it's not his fault. I'm sorry, as much as I love that scene and Robin Williams, everything, you don't fix trauma in 5 seconds. And it's not the person go, oh, well, duh, if I just would have thought about it that way. Like,
right.
Mental health is a series of situations, a series of antecedents, responses, crafted, honed response. It's like that family recipe that takes years and years to get right. It takes just as long to get wrong, which means correcting it takes even more time to quote unquote get right. And it really does bother me, because I think people's impression of mental health going into it has been so harshly bombarded by this idea of, well, fix me, doctor. say the thing that I need to hear to get better. And it's like, there's nothing I could say to you during this meeting that's going to fix you, because you're going to tell me what you think I want to hear. And it really doesn't matter what you say to me in this hour. It doesn't matter a hill of beans, because it's what you do when you leave the session. It's the different choice that you make in that moment. And it's just knowing that you're supported and that you have someone to talk to if things go wrong, or you have someone to support you when you're making those choices of doing something new. And I really, it's always bothered me. And I know you got to tell a good story. I understand that, but I rarely, let me say it this way. One of the only true depictions of mental health and response to mental health in general that I've ever seen, or that I can remember off the top of my head, is in Scrubs, where, I love Scrubs. Dr. Cox's response to the death of Jordan's brother played a Brendan Fraser, was like his burnout was the most realistic depiction, because he went through all the kind of classic things, and it wasn't any, oh, you just need to get back out there, buddy. He's like, yeah, you just keep telling yourself that sport. Like, he was very like, yeah, I'm kind of messed up right now, and I just need to wait until I'm not messed up,
Right.
or work on being less messed up every day. And you know what? I could be fine today, and then 3 months from now, I'm not okay that day. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean I've relapsed. It doesn't mean that I've taken a turn for the worse. It maybe means that my mental health got the best of me that day. Maybe I was
Yeah.
too tired or too overworked, or a myriad of reasons. Mental health is not a plug that goes in and out of the wall.
Right.
It's a process. So
Yeah.
yes, now that I've taken 20 minutes to answer a 2-minute question,
No, it's good. It's good.
it's my leitmotif. Did you hear the venomous passion in that answer?
Yeah, no, that's a good one to eliminate for sure. And it's not, you're not, once you graduate, once you get your qualifications, you get your own practice. No one hands you a sheet that says, say these, go through this list until one of them fixes them. Like,
Right.
Here's your list.
Yeah.
Just say these things. Like, that's not a thing.